Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Samantha Leighanne and I talk about books. Welcome to my May wrap up. This was a pretty good month for me, to be completely honest. I did read 10 books. Of those 10 books, I had 3 5-star reads, 1 4-star read, and 6 3-star reads. So I did have some stuff that I really loved this month, which is awesome. As far as format goes, I read 2 audiobooks and then I read physical copies of 8 of them. Some of the ones that I read or have physical copies of, I did a combination of both reading and audio, but I didn't listen to the entire audiobook. Okay, so I know I started out the month vlogging and then I got busy. So we'll go ahead and go into the vlog footage now, and then I'll come and wrap you up with the rest of the books. Hey you guys, I just did a little bit of filming, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about some of the books that I've already read for the month of May. First thing that I finished, because I was on this true crime kick, I did finish The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. I listened to this on audiobook and I ended up giving it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it because it actually centers around Ted Bundy. If you're unfamiliar with Ted Bundy, I don't know how you could not be familiar with him, but he is a serial killer from the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember the exact years, but Anne Rule, the person who wrote the book, actually had a personal relationship with Ted Bundy. So that aspect of it was very interesting because of the relationship that she had, and she was able to provide like a little bit more insight than, say, you know, someone who is just writing a story about him. And the most interesting thing to me was that she had a deal to write the book about the person who was committing these murders before she ever knew that it was Bundy, and that is just wild to me. The story was structured in a very linear way, and I feel like she did do a good job of talking more about him as a person than, say, the actual crimes that he committed, although she does go into detail about the crimes that he commits. There are some parts that are hard to get through for that reason. Overall, I really enjoyed it, but I wish that we would have gotten a little bit more of him, like in his childhood, and what could have possibly made him the way that he was. I really find that kind of thing compelling, so I wish you would have been able to expand on that, but overall I thought that it was good. If true crime is something that you like and you haven't read this book, it might be worth a shot. So from there I continued on with nonfiction and I ended up picking up Killers of the Flower Moon. This is another nonfiction and really true crime that is about the Osage murders in Oklahoma of the Osage Native American tribe. It took place in the 20s. The Osage were on their land, discovered that they had oil, and became very rich people because of that. But of course, because they are Native Americans and because of the extreme racism of that time period, the government stepped in. And so there were the head rights, which were awarded to the tribe members, which allowed them to, you know, get the money from the selling of the oil, right? And the Osage people started dying after this, and it was murder. More often than not, a lot of people died, and unfortunately, as the book goes on and you really start to learn about the people that are committing these terrible, terrible crimes, it ran really deep. There wasn't a specific person that was doing these things. It was anybody who thought that they would be able to gain a little bit of riches from the Osage, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking in that way. The writing of this book was excellent. It was a nonfiction that read like fiction, and that's my favorite type of nonfiction. However, you never forgot that these were real people that this happened to. David Grann did a really good job of making you remember that these were real people. Another side story to this book is really the beginnings of the FBI and what FBI investigations kind of looked like, and there really wasn't that much focus on that, which I appreciated because I really felt like the core of the story should have been about the Osage. So even though they did touch on those things and you know, talked about like J. Edgar Hoover and things like that, it wasn't an overwhelming part of the book. It's told in 3 parts, and if you listen to the audio, each of the parts is narrated by someone different, and so I thought that was a really nice touch. But overall, overall, I really enjoyed it. It was really compelling. I listened to it very quickly and I ended up giving it 5 stars. So once again, like, I'm in this nonfiction kick. So I started looking on my shelves and I was like, I have no idea what I'm in the mood for. And then I remembered that I did actually have another nonfiction on my shelves, and that was Cleopatra, A Life. This is by Stacy Schiff. And honestly, I knew next to nothing about Cleopatra. She is very much shrouded in myth. This was really interesting. I ended up giving it 3 stars only because at times the writing was pretty dry. One of the other things that I appreciated in the way that this was written was as she goes through, she does do footnotes, but the footnotes that she does aren't like huge and in-depth, and it's really just kind of expanding on a point that she makes in the main text, just to kind of clarify or give you a little bit more information if it's something that you're not super familiar with. One of the things that I loved about this book is the fact that Cleopatra's life was kind of like a soap opera, to be completely honest. You had the family that she came from, and she actually came to the throne through murder, so, you know, everybody kind of murdered everyone and it wasn't really a big thing. And so like that was really interesting. It's like, oh, well, we don't like the way that this is being done, so let's see who we can kill. So it's like a soap opera, like people are sleeping with this person but they're married to this person, but they have this illegitimate child over here. So for that reason, it could be like a little bit confusing, but I ended up really liking it. But it was really informative and I did enjoy it for it being a nonfiction. It's just like I said, parts of it were really dry. So from there, I was like, oh, what do I want to read? And my mind goes like very linearly. So like I started looking on my shelves and I'm like, oh, I have the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller and I've wanted to read that. And I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, well that's about like mythology and stuff. And I feel like I kind of need a refresher, and I have this beautiful edition of the Iliad. And so I started reading that. This translation isn't awesome, but it's okay. There's a lot of repetition in the Iliad, in case you didn't know this. So I honestly got about like halfway through it and I was like, I don't even want to read this anymore. Like, I just want to go read the Song of Achilles. But I also have a really big problem DNFing things, and like, I don't know, I just feel like I can cross this off of my list having read it, you know, like check that off, because there's a lot of classics that I'm never gonna read, just being honest about it. But I am glad that I read this. 3 stars, I guess. So those are the 4 books that I have read so far this month. All right, I will see you guys in the next section. Hey guys, I think this is the first vlog section with my short hair, but I have a couple of books that I wanted to talk about. So the first book is I See You. Okay, I have a cat in my lap. He's being the neediest pancake because we're fixing to go on vacation and I think he knows something's up. But okay, talking about books. First book that I'm going to talk about is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is a retelling of Patroclus and Achilles, but definitely much more gay. And y'all, I read the Iliad ahead of time just to kind of like refamiliarize myself with the whole thing. Honestly, I probably didn't need to do that, but now I can say that I've read the Iliad. But The Song of Achilles broke me. It broke my heart. I loved everything about it. I loved the way that it was written. It was told from the perspective of Patroclus. There was like a natural progression of time. I loved the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus and how that kind of built over time. I thought that it was really well done. I actually did have trouble finishing it because like I knew how it ended and I didn't want to, I didn't want to read it because I knew how it ended and it was making my heart sad. But I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I ended up giving it 5 stars. So that is a thing. I have a review on Goodreads. It's probably like a little bit more coherent than what I just did, but whatever. Half of my face is out of the frame. I'm not very good at this whole vlogging thing, y'all. Like sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. So after that, I've still like really been into the whole like mythology thing. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is actually like read books on my shelves. And so I looked through my shelves and I had this chunker of a book. That's what I was trying to say. Helen of Troy by Margaret George. It's told from the perspective of Helen herself. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It's long, first of all. There was a lot of stuff in here that I felt like just like, I don't care about the women washing their clothes on the river. Like, we don't need to include that detail. And I think that the author was trying to like give you a lot of details so that like you would really immerse yourself into the settings. And so like I see what she was trying to do, but she definitely went overboard. I loved the story. I liked the character of Helen. She wasn't shitty like I thought that she was gonna be for some reason. And I think it's because most of the other stories that I've read of Helen of Troy, she's been kind of an asshat. But she didn't write her that way, obviously, because like she's the main person of this book. Just there was a lot of extraneous detail that didn't need to be put in there. The way that time progressed was very strange. The Trojan War lasted 10 years. However, the way that this was written made it seem like it all happened in a week. And then all of a sudden, you know, she's old. It was like one paragraph, she's younger, and the next paragraph, it's like, oh, by the way, you know, I'm in my 40s now, or however the fuck old she was. And I'm just like, wait a minute, what? So there was definitely that like a natural progression of time. And then the pacing also was just not that great. You know, there were moments where like nothing happened. And then there were moments where everything happened and she's describing battles on the field. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I don't care about this stuff that's happening. So I really wanted to love this. And I honestly thought that I was going to, but it just wasn't as great as I wanted it to be. So there's that. That's a thing. But those are the only 2 books that I have to talk about right now. Today is Friday the 18th, and I am leaving for vacation on the 20th, and we'll be gone until the 25th. We're going to the beach. Your girl is so excited because I need a break. So I'm not 100% sure, you know, what I'm going to be bringing with me or what I'm going to be reading. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'll see you guys in the next clip. So here we are with the last half of the wrap up, and it's literally the last half because I have 5 books that I need to talk about. So the first book that I'm going to start with is Amina's Voice. This is by, I can't remember the author's name, and I don't have a physical copy of the book anymore. I did donate that to my library. Gave this book 3 stars. It was a super cute book about a young girl who is really trying to balance her identity as a Pakistani American, you know, and just as a normal kid. It was a really cute little book, really fast read. It was middle grade, which is the other reason that it took me like a day to read it. I did donate it to my library. It's not a book that I see myself rereading, and I know it can do more good in the hands of another person, so I went ahead and donated that to the library. So next book was American Street by Evie Zaboy. This is another book that I gave 3 stars. I did really enjoy aspects of it, and then there were other aspects that I definitely struggled with. It's about a Haitian American immigrant who is trying to navigate the streets of Detroit without her mother. It deals with a lot of different things. You know, you're talking about abusive relationships, you know, immigration, drugs, alcohol abuse, physical violence. And because there were so many of those really tough subjects that were kind of pushed all together in this fairly short book, I feel like some of those things sort of lost their impact. I feel like some of the issues would have been a little bit more impactful had she taken some of those things out and just focused on a select few issues, made those particular issues more impactful. I struggled with some of the abusive relationships with this book, and that's one of the reasons that I did give it 3 stars. But I did really enjoy the inclusion of the Haitian culture within the book, so I did really enjoy that. Overall, I did think that it's a good book, even though I did give it 3 stars. You know, that doesn't mean that it's bad, but there were just a couple things that kind of detracted from it for me. I think it is definitely an important book, so that's another reason that I don't have a physical copy. I did go ahead and donate that one to my library as well. Next up, we have one of the audiobooks that I listened to, and that is Jane Seymour, The Haunted Queen. This is by Alison Weir. This is part of her series that she is currently writing. She has 1 book for each of Henry VIII's wives. I have read the first 2 books and I did enjoy them. The second one a little bit less, just because I have read so much on the subject of Anne Boleyn. And honestly, I wanted to really love this book because I have never read a book about Jane Seymour. But Jane Seymour was a really boring queen. Part of the book takes place during the queenship of Anne Boleyn. And so you're just rehashing some of the old information. One of the things that I did really enjoy is the fact that more often than not, whenever you're reading a book about Anne Boleyn, she is kind of portrayed as more of a villain type, you know, someone who did whatever she could to get to the crown. And to a certain extent, yes, that was true. But one of the reasons that Jane Seymour, you know, it's called the Haunted Queen is because she kind of goes back and forth between Anne's innocent or guilt, you know, and the fact that she was put to death. I really wanted more from this book. I'm definitely still going to continue with the series because the next 3 queens, with the exception of Catherine Parr, which was his last wife who outlived him, I don't think that I've seen very many books about them, so I'm interested to see what she's gonna do since we are even more removed from Anne Boleyn. So 3 stars. It was okay. Wanted more from it. The next book that we're gonna talk about is probably my most anticipated book of the entire year, and that is The Outsider by Stephen King. Look how shiny that cover is. We're just gonna put it on the shelf over here because it's kind of a chunker and I don't feel like holding it up. So first of all, I gave it 5 stars and I wasn't expecting to give it 5 stars. So incredibly brief synopsis. There is a child who is found murdered and all the evidence points to this one person in the town, and so they arrest him. Turns out things are not what they seem. Wow, I really loved this book and I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. One of the things that I will say, if you are wanting to pick this book up, you need to make sure that you do read the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. It's not a continuation of the trilogy, it is a standalone. However, one of the characters from the Bill Hodges trilogy does make an appearance within this book, and there are spoilers for End of Watch. So don't pick it up unless you just don't care that you're gonna be spoiled for End of Watch. But okay, I really loved the characters. Holly Gibney from the Hodges trilogy is the character that makes the appearance, and she apparently gets on a lot of people's nerves, and she did at the beginning of the Hodges trilogy for me. By the time we got to End of Watch, I definitely really liked her, and she really like shines in this book. So one of the things that struck me is the brutality of certain scenes within this book. The descriptions of the crime against this child at certain points are very hard to get through. There is a scene within this book. I did this book half print and half audio because once I sat down and started reading it and I couldn't stop, and I needed to know what happened, and so I had shit that I needed to do. So I was like, you know what? I have a credit from Audible. We're gonna download it because like I need to know what happens. And there was one scene in particular where kind of listening and, you know, like things are happening and all of a sudden shit just blew up and it fucked me up. It's difficult to describe because like I want to talk about what happened, but obviously I can't because major spoilers. But all of a sudden like shit just started happening. You're just like, oh my God, what is happening? Why is this happening? Because it was just like so jarring. But the way that it was written too, it felt real. It felt like something that you would actually see happening. And I think that that was one of the reasons that it was jarring, and that was one of the reasons that it impacted me the way that it did. Audiobook was narrated by Will Patton, and it was excellently done. He has narrated a lot of audiobooks for King, and I have always loved his narrations. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, especially after Sleeping Beauties. I definitely struggled through that one, and I was kind of like, okay, I don't know. And especially reading the synopsis and knowing that it was about a child murder, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But it was absolutely excellent. The only thing that I don't want to say struggled with, the only thing is there is a slight issue in pacing. I feel like there were points where it did kind of drag a little bit. However, for the most part, I absolutely loved this book. If you're on the fence about reading it because you didn't love Sleeping Beauties or you didn't love the Hodges trilogy, I definitely encourage you to pick it up anyway. It is, it's good. It's real good, y'all. And the last book that I read this month was Emma in the Night. This is by Wendy Walker. This is a quick read. It is kind of a thriller type. So you're dealing with Emma and Cass. They are 2 young girls. They're kind of dealing with the fallout of their mother's narcissistic personality disorder. And the girls just disappear. And 3 years later, one of them comes back, and we're retracing our steps trying to figure out where Emma is. This is told from multiple perspectives. It's told from Cass as she comes back, and it's told from the perspective of one of the psychologists. So this book is nothing groundbreaking. Like, let me start there. I did give it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, but it's nothing groundbreaking. It is fairly predictable in a certain way. It is fairly easy to guess like what's going to happen, but the thing that I loved most about this book is the depiction of having a family member, especially a mother, who has narcissistic personality disorder and what that can do to people and how that can affect them, and you know how they turn out and the decisions that they make and things like that. That was my favorite part. As far as like the thrillery aspects of it, like I said, it like parts of it are a little bit predictable, but for the most part I still enjoyed it. It wasn't overly cliched, I didn't feel like, but you do have like your standard unreliable narrator and you know things like that for a thriller and whatever. So but if that's your deal, then I would definitely recommend reading this. So overall, this was a really great reading month. I'm gonna try and make sure that I go through and actually do more of the vlogging style for Dune. I feel like I like that better, and it's easier for me to get my thoughts all together like as I go through and read these books. So that is all I have for you guys. Have you read any of these books? If you liked them, comment down below, let me know. If you didn't, let's talk about it. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you click thumbs up or hit subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.